Near the end of 1918, when World War I ended, American soldiers came home with vivid memories of one of the bloodiest conflicts human beings had engaged in up to that point in time. Memories of living in trenches knee-deep in mud with rats in the decomposing bodies of their comrades, of the first widespread use of the machine gun, of miles of razor wire, mustard gas, and the introduction of the tank. Some of these men came home with what we call today PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. But some of those men brought home a more vicious killer than all of these things combined. A killer that would claim an estimated 50 million lives worldwide and nearly 700,000 in America. The killer they carried inside their bodies was the Spanish flu. The flu started in the spring of 1918 and came home with these returning soldiers. To this day, it is still not known with any level of certainty where the flu actually started. Although theories on where it started have been put forward, none have been proven beyond a doubt. It got the name Spanish flu not because that was the country of origin, but because the Spanish media was more open in reporting the actual number of flu cases in their country than the media in other countries. This made it appear Spain had more cases and therefore must have been the country of origin, which was proven to be false. One of the unusual things about this flu was young, healthy adults, 20 to 40, was particularly hard hit. This age group had a much higher mortality rate than they should have had. Earlier this year, a group using ground-penetrating radar located a mass grave of Spanish flu victims in an isolated cemetery at the foot of Black Mountain in northern Harlan County. Our friend Micah Turner asked us to join him for his second visit to this cemetery. We were happy to join him and his friend Karsten Dixon and to collaborate with him on the rediscovery of this historic mass grave. Hey folks, send help, I'm lost. No, I'm joking. We're in Lynch, Kentucky at the foot of Black Mountain, and we're with Micah Turner, and he's going to tell us about what was found here. But first we're going to watch my wife fall down. I'm leaving that in the video, but anyway, he's going to tell us that this is kind of a serious thing. Some folks came in and they had looked for this cemetery for quite a while, and they finally actually found it. It's a cemetery of Spanish flu victims who died in Lynch. Micah, go ahead.
And so a lot of locals knew exactly where this was, but like it's really been forgotten about for the most part. But in 1917, U.S. Steel come in and established Lynch and everything, and then 1918 come around, and a lot of the immigrants coming in brought along the Spanish flu, which took U.S. Steel by storm. They had all these people who was dying by like mass amounts, and so the first couple of graves were dug in mass graves, and then people started complaining as they normally would do, and so they switched and started burying them in, like on their own as you would in a normal graveyard. But this Spanish flu sort of graveyard back in the middle of the mountains here has been long abandoned, but I've heard talk that they're going to try to put this place back on the map.
Folks, this is the Spanish flu cemetery in Lynch, Kentucky. It was pretty much lost to outsiders for many years, although the locals knew about it. And we've come up here with our friends Micah and Karsten to do some video of it and just look at them. We already found on this tree this unusual headstone there. It's really, I mean, it looks like English, but then again, it kind of sounds like Russian. So the grave must have been right here under the tree, or the tree grew on top of the grave and somebody moved the marker to it.
Well, if they hadn't put that there,
yeah. But anyway, tell us about Lynch's reaction to the flu and what you're talking about, the reason they have this cemetery.
So it basically took the entire community by storm, because you have this whole sort of outbreak happen all at one time that took out a lot of the employees and families and such in the area. And so at first they didn't, not knowing what to do, began to bury the people in mass graves. And from what I've been told, there's only one or two that's been actually found. But afterwards, they, of course, come along and did normal graves, but still.
Yeah.
it's amazing to see like how much history is back in the middle of the woods here.
And you can see the folks that have come up here, excuse me, previously has put some orange marker flags at the graves they found.
From what I was also told is that they brought some type of land device where they could view like under the ground and everything, and they was able to mark the graves that way.
Yeah, I think I've seen folks use that. I think it's kind of like an ultrasound they do on the ground, or that's as much as I know. But anyway, this would be the flu. Of course, was 1918, and see, as you can see here on this marker, that this is a child. And from what I read about it some years ago, is it hit young people worse than it did old people. They was much more likely to die with it. And it's called Spanish flu, but to this day, they're not truly sure of the origin of it. It broke out as our soldiers came back from World War I. And I remember my grandmother telling me stories of when she was a young girl of like 17, across Pine Mountain in Harlan County. She had went to help lay out some folks with her mother who had died from it because everybody was afraid to touch them, afraid to get the flu. So let's look around here, folks. Y'all ready to look around?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm looking at these trees. They look very old.
Yeah. This is actually a beautiful stone carve. It's a rock, but it's had this carving in it. And it looks like an Italian girl, which there was a lot of immigrants here. And she was, what, about 30?
30, yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like I said, what I read is the Spanish flu hit the young folks worse than it did the older folks, which is kind of opposite to the last pandemic we had. And we found another one that looks like it's possibly Russian or some ancient form of Russian that's not used today. We know nothing about this. Help us, folks. Anybody that does, please post in the comments and tell us. But there was a lot of immigrants here. I'd say, no doubt, way more immigrants than there was locals at the time.
Italians and Germans and just about anybody under the sun would have been here working for the mines at the time, just trying to find a better way of living for their families.
Now, Micah mentioned that there used to be wooden crosses all through here.
I was told that they used to scatter this entire hillside, crosses everywhere, marking all the graves whenever other people were younger, but as time's come and gone, you'll find them fell over and in weeds and in pieces everywhere up through here.
But possibly these folks that came in and actually sounded the ground and found these graves, they're maybe going to do some kind of restoration on this.
I know for sure they're supposed to put a sign up there to mark where this is.
Okay, so they're going to put a sign up on the road at least. And so you got these little flags they came in. Everywhere there's a flag, they found a person. And you say there's a couple of mass graves in here?
There's at least, they marked one mass grave on it.
One mass grave. There's so many at that point they didn't know what to do with them. And of course, back in the day, in bombing sites and stuff not being what it is now, they didn't have a lot of time to take care of the departed.
Exactly. They were dropping like flies everywhere. Right here's one of those crosses.
Oh, and here's one of the crosses he talked about.
Just falling over with time. Slowly deteriorating. Which marks for sure
Yeah.
the grave right there.
Now, folks, if you come around this cemetery or any cemetery like this, especially one that they're working as a historical site, walk around, look around, make a video, but don't move anything. I mean, even like this little cross here, leave it exactly where you find it.
Just be respectful.
Yes, yes. Now, folks, you can see these little orange flags in the ground, how many they are, and the tombstones and the fallen crosses. And this is just the one community of Lynch. It really shows you the scope of the pandemic of the 20th century, you could say, the 1918 Spanish flu. And like I said, what I read about it, it was particularly deadly to young people, children and babies, and people in their 20s, healthy otherwise. And there's still not a whole lot new about it. Oh, yeah, there's one of those crosses in the.
This right here is the mass grave.
Oh, right here. Okay, Micah says right here would be the mass grave they found, because it does look like they got it circled with the flags.
This is probably the baby in the middle.
Yeah.
And because it's small and it's sunken with a rock.
Oh, and up here's one of the crosses and what looks like a sunk. Yeah.
Or
That looks
something
like
that.
that looks like two graves, possibly, with a smaller one in the middle.
Yeah, because it's sunken.
Maybe a family
Yeah, it's sad.
that was wiped out, and there's one of those crosses. And here in this circle of these flags is, Micah tells us, the mass grave.
It was kind of heartbreaking to kind of see.
Yeah.
How,
Yeah, it was so.
Yeah, there's a cross, and that could possibly be a child's. If it is, it would be like the parents or maybe the grandparents
or two
and a
older
child that
kids.
died from it, or two older kids.
Yeah, it was really.
You know, time goes
I
by,
read on that. It was really bad.
and we kind of, you know, the hurt goes away because the generations have passed away. But for these people, it was as real as anything that's happened to us in the past few years.
With what we just had, that scared us.
This was really a lot worse than that in so many ways. And also, you know, the treatment folks got for the pandemic we had, especially where it attacked the lungs, they didn't have that treatment back then.
You know, standing here, it's just overwhelming because that goes way out there, and there's a lot of coverage right
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
A lot.
you know every bit of this.
Overwhelming.
This
The knowledge that there was.
yeah.
Like, isn't
Yeah, and how many that's not even found and marked
You
yet?
know, on my altar, down, or
I see a pile of bricks up there.
yeah, there's a lot of rock.
And here's another stone. It appears to be in a, what was you saying, Karsten?
This is actually like Russian that you would speak nowadays. Like, this is more of a modern Russian, as the other gravestone over there is more of like a branch of Russian that has kind of faded away, you know, like ancient Greek and stuff like that. This seems more like a modern Russian, so a lot easier to translate and stuff.
I've actually talked to a guy, this may be the one he mentioned though, that one tombstone ended up translating to a slave for God. And so that kind of puts into perspective, and by the look of this, I'm seeing 1918 on this one too. And so I would say...
Hey folks, from the Spanish Flu Cemetery at Lynch, Kentucky, thank you guys for walking around and checking out this historic and tragic chapter in history. We appreciate you guys, and God rest all the souls here. Bye folks.
We'll say y'all.
So yeah.